Good afternoon, everyone, or evening, depending on where you are, and welcome to episode 12 of Living on Borrowed Crime Real Talk with true crime content creators. And my guest today is Kamran of TruRed Crime. Welcome to the show, Kamran.
Thank you for having me on, sir.
And am I saying that correctly? Because part of me wants to say Kamran, but I don't know if it's Cameron or Kamran.
They're both. Depending on
Okay.
which side of the world, they're both.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure I get that right. But yes, Cameron was supposed to join us for the panel discussion last time talking about the objections to true crime, but there was a scheduling snafu. So I'm hoping to touch on those subjects with him briefly today. And also to the audience, if you take a look at the top of the chat box, there's a link up there to the National Center for Victims of Crime. If you can donate there, I would ask you that you do so. If you can't, that's fine. But if you can, share that out on social media. That would be appreciated. And let me get this out of the way before we get too far into. Derek LaRue, thank you so much for your donation. Very much appreciated, as always, for your support and generosity. And anyone who has any super chats or questions for Cameron as we proceed, feel free to post them there. And there will be a few minutes at the end to go over anything anybody else wants to ask before we wrap up. All right. Well, first and foremost, I've been watching your stuff for at least a couple of years now. And I've been a big fan, and I've really appreciated the amount of work that you do and the amount of toil you must go through with some of this stuff. But first, I wanted to find out what's your background. Do you have any broadcasting experience or anything in law enforcement prior to starting a true crime channel?
Well, thank you for the kind words. No, I've never created any kind of video or like even back in the day when you had Vine and stuff like that. Never did any of that. It was during COVID where
Hmm.
my son was born, and then when as soon as lockdown happened, I was laid off from work.
Oh no.
Um, so then I had to make a conscious decision. Okay, I used to live in England. I live in America now. I have a family. I cannot I need to ensure that I can provide because that's my duty as a man. That's how I felt.
Yes.
So with somewhat free time, it's lockdown. You're at home all day. I'm not
Hmm.
working. I just started creating content on TikTok because that's when TikTok started to blow up, right? Um, and then from then I learned editing, and I've always watched true crime stuff like David Fincher, who
Hmm.
directed damn, what was that?
Seven.
Zodiac Seven and Zodiac, the best true
Zodiac.
crime
Yes.
film
Yes.
I've seen, and True Detective on HBO and Mindhunters on Netflix. I've always been interested in the true crime genre.
Hmm.
So once I got used to talking to a camera, once I taught myself editing, I gave it a crack, and here I am. So that's essentially the background and how I got into this.
Now is your operation still just a one man shop, or do you edit or farm out into the editing or anything?
So it depends on my schedule. This is my full time job. So if I have a
Hmm.
busy week with family commitments or whatever, then I'll outsource the editing. So it just depends. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I outsource it. But in terms of picking the crime, getting the case files, going to the courthouses, talking to whoever was involved, and getting the primary source documents, I do all that myself.
Okay. And the one thing that I've always your work stood out to me amongst so many others, and this is a common element, at least for my. I'm kind of a true crime snob. I can't help it at
Mhm.
this point. But something I've always appreciated is that you're able to speak from direct experience from both the places and societies in a lot of the cases where some of the stories you cover come from, and in some cases, direct cultural knowledge from your
Yeah.
upbringing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, how much does that prior knowledge play into how you decide what cases to cover?
It's an excellent question. So one that I covered recently where there was like an arranged marriage from Pakistan and she moved to
Right.
Britain, right? Now, as soon as she moved to Britain, that family, her new family, they treated her like crap. Now, you there's many marriages that don't work out, but from someone who's from that culture, why they did it, I had some insight into it because
Mhm.
I haven't experienced it myself directly, like in my parents' home, but I've known within the family of extended family that stuff like this happens. Now, let's say you have a family that's not Pakistani and the same thing happens, right? Or a Hispanic family. I can't really explain that from a cultural point of view. To me, it's just random phenomena. They did it because they're bad people. But with my own culture, I can go through the nuances of why pride, ego, Um, so as soon as I see a crime of that nature, it's like half the script's already written for me.
Mhm. So do you tend to avoid crimes or stories that you can tell you don't have any kind of direct, connection to? Or I just watched recently the video you did, and I honestly forget the guy's name, but it was where um, the kid who had been bullied in school and a girl
Mhm.
took
Yep.
kindly to him, and then
Nick
her and her boyfriend.
Nicholson. Yeah.
Yeah, David, I think, or something like that, or Michael,
Yeah.
I forget now. And you spoke about having having a sort of a sympathetic notion to what the kid must have been going through to reach that point where he was trusting somebody that much. Is that what mainly drives your selection and how you cover cases? Is that if you could find a personal connection of some kind, or do you feel like you're more of just a journalist in a way that you just find something that's interesting or different?
It's a great question. So it does depend on the case. I I don't necessarily look for what I can relate to, but the cases that I can relate to, that's when you'll see more of the emotion. That's when you
Hmm.
might see more of the details. Like in the case of Nicholson, that was the kid that you're talking about.
Yes.
When I went to I grew up in England. I went to school in England. There were plenty of kids. It was an all boys school, right? And there were plenty of kids who reminded me of Nicholson, where they'd be in the corner, other kids would bully them, and obviously I would do nothing about it because I'm like 14. What do I know? You know? Um, but and all these kids wanted to do, like any other kid, was just to belong. That's it. They just want to be a part of something. But because of let's just say a tough home life or a
Hmm.
lack of social skills, they never really fit in. Now, I've always felt that same way about my life. Never saw England as my home, which is why I
Right.
live in America now. Not that it's anything wrong with England. I just didn't feel like I was at home. So I think when I saw that case, I could kind of see into his soul. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Hmm.
could. It's like I looked into his eyes and I saw the bullying. I saw the pain. I saw how he would go home and cry. I saw that the two dimwits that he tried to be friends with, right?
Hmm.
Like he would have begged for their friendship or he would have done anything for them, just so he could feel wanted and needed. So just
Yes.
like I just looked into his soul. But you see the passion I'm telling you that, right?
Yeah. And
But there's many
that's yeah. Go ahead.
sorry, there's many other cases I couldn't give you that analysis because I don't have that same, what do you want to call it? That same relation. So yeah.
Miranda Stone, thank you so much. Hey, Kamran, glad you're here.
Thank you, Miranda. Good to see you.
Miranda being the queen of the discords in my little world. Yeah, and that's the as I mentioned, that's the one thing that has stood out to me for both in your presentation and Misery Machine and Mr. Black is um, the genuine nature in which you present the information. I don't feel like I'm listening to a reporter. I don't feel like I'm listening to an AI bot or anything. I'm listening to somebody who genuinely connects or cares or has something to say about the material. Dave's Lemonade, he always has like a section at the end of his videos where he says, now I'm going to move away from telling about the story and talk about my own thoughts. Whereas yours are more interwoven as we
Yeah.
go. And so it really does feel like I'm listening to a friend to tell me a story. Is that something that you've crafted over time, or is that just what comes naturally to you as you've been doing the content?
Are you asking for like the personal touch?
Well, I mean, so I found, and I've been doing live streaming on YouTube now for nigh on 8 years, and
Yeah.
even though, as far as I can tell, I am always as genuine and not showy and not putting on a character or anything. There are times where I might embellish something for the sake of comedy or reaction or something or else, but I'm not being someone else. Is your presentation, you feel, wholly you, or are you, as you're scripting and recording, do you feel you're putting on a little bit of a mask, or I don't know if I'm wording this correctly, but do you understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, there's certainly no mask in any
Mhm,
video I make. A lot of those comments that you hear from me, the interwoven that you mentioned, they're all
mhm.
off the cuff. I don't plan
Mm,
any of
they're not
like
scripted.
no, they're not
Okay.
scripted. When I tell you the story, that is, but as
Mhm,
the story goes on, like what I'm thinking anyway just comes out, you
Okay.
know.
All right.
But
Because it feels
being
like that, but I wasn't sure because it always like you only see what's on the camera, and you can't obviously read the person's mind. But I always felt that way, and so uh, just to come back, that makes me more assured in how genuine you are when you're reporting on this stuff.
of course. So for example, when I write the script, I don't say insert Muppet hair, you know. That's not written. Certainly not. No.
Right.
Or when I
Okay.
swear, or when I'm showing some emotion. No, that is always off the cuff.
And with that amount of emotional connection you make, either planned or unplanned as you go through the story, given some of the material you covered, I think I've asked every guest I've had on the show this, especially when it comes to, since you're a father now, especially when it comes to the crimes against children, how do you manage or compartmentalize that kind of darkness, and still pick yourself up and get on to the next case and still want to keep doing this?
In terms of like the mental toll it could take, seeing case after
Yeah.
case after case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it depends. I think it's because of my outlook on life. Like, there's a courthouse nearby. One of the earlier cases I covered. I went to the courthouse. I went through the documents, and I didn't realize, but like all the crime scene images were there,
Oh, geez.
and which because I'm going through the file and I'm scrolling down on the PC, and I just see the
Mhm.
images. And the next minute I know, I'm like, I see a house, I see a bed. I'm like, "Oh, cool." But what I didn't realize is it then went to the autopsy, and apparently the child that was murdered, they took the liver out, they took the stomach out, and you can see the doctor holding it.
Oh,
And I
jeez.
and I didn't expect this because I was just scrolling through, and
Right, right.
I looked at it, and I was, instead of thinking, "That's disgusting," or "Ew," I thought, "Wait, they did this?" Like, why?
Mm.
Like, I didn't know this happened during an autopsy. So I realized then that as morbid as it is, my palate can handle it, if that makes sense.
Okay. Sure.
You know?
Okay. So you have a
Um,
tolerance level.
there you go. That's probably a better way to put it. But that's just completely random. Like I've never looked at images like this before. I don't have a
Mhm.
morbid mind, or I don't really have that much of a morbid curiosity.
Mhm.
But once I came across it, I was okay with it. And let's just say you do not want to see what's on my hard drive. You know?
No,
Um,
probably not. So
yeah.
it surprised you that you were able to sort of manage that. I mean, it was just kind of a surprise, a shock to you, and suddenly you discovered that you had a strong stomach for this kind of thing.
Yeah, because I didn't go seeking it. This was very early on when I was like, okay, I want to do this. I've learned everything on how to do it, the editing, the recording, the script writing. Now I just needed
Mhm.
cases, right?
Right.
Um, and I figured out ways to get cases that nobody else is doing. Like I live in Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, DC. Nobody ever talks about Virginia on a global scale. Who knows what happens in Virginia? So I figured there's many cases I can tell that nobody knows, right?
Mhm.
And this is when I started to inquire about local crimes, getting local information, and that's when I came across all this gruesome stuff, to which I was just okay with consuming it, you know.
So I don't want to dwell too long, but so did you have any prior to this? Did you have any notion you had such a clinical mind when it comes to things like this? Or was
No, no,
was this a realization that just kind of came about as because of this?
a realization. It's purely based on life experience. As you get older, you get better at connecting dots, you know.
Mhm.
So
Okay. And is it important to you that you cover crimes that, generally speaking, haven't been covered by others?
that's the first thing I look at when I find a name. That's the
Mhm.
first thing I look at. If they haven't covered it, then or like you can type, like say you type in Chris Watts, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, everyone and their mother's done it. Like,
Yes.
one, it would be stupid for me as a creator to do it, because I mean, what's the point in putting all that effort? Nobody's gonna wanna watch it. That story's been
Mhm.
told.
Right.
Um, but also, as I'm a father, um, like right now, none of you know who my son is or my daughter, right? But
Sure.
maybe at some point in the future you will.
Mhm.
But there's so many kids that have been lost, who've been through so much that we would never know, you
Mhm.
know? So, a lot of the, fatherly love or parenting comes into it, and a lot of is just like a lot of my videos get demonetized,
Sure. Of course they
and
do.
And in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I've tried my best. They don't want to monetize it. His story needs to be told anyway. You know.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Speaking of which, just as a note that I forgot to put at the top of the show, if you're not aware of Kamran and TruRed Crime, and or you'd like to donate or look at all his links and everything, I put all of his particulars in the description below. I think I got your Patreon in there, your Twitter, your YouTube channels, both the primary and the secondary. And so, yeah, check out the channel if you haven't already. I'm sure a lot of you already know, or if you know someone that does like true crime, check it out. By the way, where did the name TruRed Crime come from? Is there some meaning behind that?
It's yeah. So red is the color of my favorite soccer team. Soccer is like my biggest passion.
Gotcha.
And true crime. So
Sure.
yeah.
Also, thank you, Keeverdam, for the thumbs up pair. I appreciate the thumbs up pair. Thank you, Keeverdam. Okay, well, I wanted to at least start touching on some of the subjects we covered in the panel discussion with the other creators from the other week. Because a little bird told me that may or may not be named Drewby, that you were chomping at the bit in some instances of wanting to answer some of these.
Oh, really?
So
Okay. Well, let's
well,
take a look.
and I don't know if that's true. Again, it was just a rumor I heard, but I still have the little banners up. So for your reference and everybody else's, uh, take your time on either as we go. So for those of you that don't know, I did a panel discussion about what, 2-3 weeks ago, something like that, where we talked about the objections or the common objections to the true crime genre. And these are them as we go. True crime presents itself as journalism, but has no professional imperative to adhere to those standards. Is a common critique of the genre. You have a reaction to that?
I mean, what is journalism is such a subjective term. So
Mm,
it's I have no it's not my duty to adhere to any professional standards unless those standards are respect the victim and call out the suspect. That's my only
mhm.
motto.
Okay. True crime profits off the misery of others without their consent.
So I've heard this many times. First and foremost, with respect, I think I'm the only one or one of a few who actually seeks out primary source materials. So
Mhm.
in epistemology, you have a primary source, which is say you have the court document, and then you'll have a secondary source, which is say the news. Right? The
Mhm.
news will get it from the court document and then tell you, and then when you tell me, that's another source. Right? So
Right.
I what the news says and the conjecture, put that to the wayside. I go and seek what actually happened. And I don't know many other creators who physically go down to the courthouse, go through all the files, um, and go through witness statements, family statements, and some of these files are like 18 folders. You know,
Sure.
so if that's me profiting off misery, that's fine. But again, my obligation is to tell the story of the victims, and not to worry about the concerns of others. You know.
Well, that almost speaks back to the first objection about the standards and of journalism, or a sense, because you're going through the actual effort of finding, like you say, primary sources and not just spitballing it as you go. And you set a
Um,
standard for yourself.
well, I mean, I like just look at the journalists in the world today. Most of them lie. None of them tell the
Mhm.
truth, and
Oh yeah.
they're trying to find some kind of click type engagement video that goes viral, just so people can get the views, etc. So the word journalism has no meaning anymore. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and just a note, I said this at the previous show. These are the objections I derived from articles. These are not my objections. I'm
Sure,
not meaning
sure,
to
yeah. No.
interrogate Kamran. Let's see the next one. True crime glorifies the actions and or raises the pop culture stature of criminals.
For me, it doesn't. For me, the only to me the what I find interesting is the psychology behind it all.
Hmm.
What made you as a man decide to make that decision to your child or woman or whatever? What made
Right.
you as a woman in that split moment when you had every opportunity to say no, you still carried out whatever you did. So that's not glorification. That's just the way I process it. And like I said, I don't really watch much true crime outside of a few YouTube videos here and there and what I do. So It certainly doesn't put these criminals on a pedestal for me.
Do you have a background in psychology at all?
No,
Do you have any formal training whatsoever?
no. I remember my first few interrogation videos.
Mhm.
I would tell them, look, I've never done any kind of psychology, but psychology itself is subjective. You're never really going to know. It's just a personal opinion based on either me or someone that's gone to school for 4 years. Is there any absolute truth in it? No, there never will be.
Okay. And the last one was true crime is bad for mental health and desensitizes society.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly see the argument, 100%. I think for certain people, true crime may be something that will affect them differently. But for most comments that I've read and most people that I know who watch true crime, for them, it's more about just relating to the victim and just going through a journey of hearing a story. So for
Mhm.
sure, it can have mental health effects, no doubt about that.
Well, those are the big objections. Yeah, when I was very young, the headlines about Ted Bundy and the Green River Killer and everything kind of dominated part of my world, and they were the real life supervillains. I was always a comic book freak when I was a kid, and then I heard about real bad guys out there, and I'd always become fascinated by the idea of what is evil at that point. My household wasn't particularly religious, so I didn't have a horned entity to relate these things back to. It was more very down to earth, and so I think that's probably what started my fascination with true crime. Is not necessarily the gory details, but just trying to, and often failing to, understand or put myself in the shoes of someone who could do such horrible things to people, because it's such an alien landscape that you see these giant books on, like you said, mind hunters, or John Douglas, or these other profilers trying to come to terms with something that just does not click for 99% of the population. And that's, I think, what my sort of boilerplate fascination has been with the subject most of my life. Um, with all of your research, even though you're not a professional psychologist or anything else, have you come to any conclusions about what drives the worst people to do things like this?
Yeah, I mean, most of them, there's some kind of child abuse that's involved, and they become the from victim to abuser, if that makes sense. But it's interesting you mentioned evil. Well, I feel like, see, as from what I've studied in philosophy, as humans, when an event takes place, we attribute the good and the bad to it, right? Like the
Mhm.
good and the bad doesn't inherently exist out there. It's something happens, and then we give it a narrative, right? So to
Sure.
someone like a Ted Bundy, it's pretty clear his narrative was, I'm gonna satisfy my own desire rather than this evil that I'm committing. So he just didn't see it as evil. So I think the driving factor for a lot of this is either unstable families or, I mean, we do live in a society where the self is paramount, right? Do
Mhm.
whatever you want, do whatever you want, seek whatever, maximize whatever pleasure you want, as the empiricist from England once said, so long as you don't cause harm. Well,
Right.
in a system like that, at some point, people will cause harm because the maximization would yes, you're gonna push the boundary so much, you know?
Yeah.
So, um, and okay, so Ted Bundy and these people of that ilk will abuse women, and in their mind, the result is either gonna be prison, which they get 3 meals a day, they get to stay in a room, so it may not seem so bad for them, or they die, to which, if they don't believe in an afterlife, why does it matter? We're all
Yeah.
just we're all going to become buffet for all the worms underground anyway. So I think, sorry, to summarize, one,
Yeah.
either a bad childhood normalizing all this for them, or two, this is the only life I have, who cares? So what difference does
Yeah.
it make? It's a
Yeah.
cold dark universe anyway.
It reminds me of Aleister Crowley, and "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law" was kind of his thing, without any sort of like moral compunction to it. But
That's to summarize what I just said, that's the perfect statement.
yeah,
Even though I disagree with him, he still was an
sure.
interesting character.
Oh yeah, 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 very, very interesting character. But yeah,
Yeah.
when it comes to trying to, I mean, just the act of trying to understand, we are, as a famous person has said many times, a pattern-seeking mammals. We're trying to rationalize and categorize things so that we can, because it's a reflex of control. Naming something gives you some kind of power over it, and when you see something that makes absolutely no sense and defies any kind of basic morality or empathy, trying to like say, well, that's a reflex of evil or something else, even if it is maybe explicable by someone's abuse or a mental illness or something, that's still trying to put, you're projecting an answer to a question that maybe never has one.
Well, also the like for example, right? If you mentioned morality there, if we gave Ted Bundy is just an example, but if we gave him the option, listen, keep doing what you're doing, but you will burn in a fire forever,
Hmm.
hypothetically. Or if we told him, keep doing what you're doing, and you know what, you may be in a box for the rest of your life, or you may die pain free from a lethal injection, but that's the most that can happen. In the two
Hmm.
scenarios, the fire is the likely the one he wants to avoid, just hypothetically,
Hmm.
you know? So I feel like um, the lack of, I don't know what the word is, but the lack of fear, I think, is
Hmm.
what drives a lot of these people to. But some people say, I think it was a Russian philosopher. He said, "If there is no God, everything is permissible." That's an interesting
Uh,
statement, you know.
was that Dostoevsky? Might have been.
Yes, yes. I
Oh,
never
yeah,
know how to say it.
I think was it the brothers Karamazov? It might have been.
Something like that, yeah. But
Yeah.
that statement, whether you agree or not, it's actually quite profound when you think about it, you know.
Mhm. Um, well, but at the same time, though, if there wasn't some kind of basic morality amongst people that's reflexive, just as a matter of, even if it's just pragmatic survival of just trying to get along, we probably wouldn't have survived as a species to this point.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Was it Kant who talked about the moral law we have inside of us? I think,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, you are right. We do have. There's something inside of us the way we can navigate the right or the wrong. You know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. It might be just reflexive sort of evolution of survival instincts for uh, group benefit, because certainly survival instincts amongst community and family and such existed long before there was um, organized or structured religious beliefs.
Yeah.
So there's something innate to us, and we can see it in other mammals as well, that don't have the same cognition that we do. That there's a sense of family, a sense of care, one for another, and community. Anyway, I get off onto tangents and things. Um, a bit more, I guess, utilitarian question, and this has come up a couple of times now in the last couple of months that I've been asked, and I kind of have an idea of why it's done, but I wanted to ask you, um, when it comes to the titles of your videos, some of them can be very descriptive, let's say, and I have seen the complaint, and I'm not going to weigh in on it, that in and of themselves, those are over the top, exploitive, and just clickbait. From your perspective, since this is your primary job as well as a passion of a kind, what do you have to say to that?
100%. The purpose is to shock and get people to click.
Do you think that's I don't know, that's cynical?
Yeah. I mean, is it? I wouldn't say it's unethical, but I don't think there's any lies to any of the titles either. You know, like I
No,
could
I
have the
yeah, no,
title.
yeah.
Yeah. So cynical, yeah, but I wouldn't call it unethical, although that wasn't your question. But I'm not
No,
going to sit here and say I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, these titles. No, of course they're for shock value with how, especially with AI and how these true crime videos have just chat. You've got like 50 other 50 times more channels now
oh,
on
sure.
true crime. As still an amateur myself, I have to do something to get ahead of the queue.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of people who, are just, and this isn't I'm not, this isn't mean to be condescending to people who are just quote unquote casual viewers of true crime, but this is an industry it is competitive. And if you try to put the amount of work and time into it that the material requires and also to be noticed, there's a pragmatism to the business that just is unavoidable. And if people don't understand that and try to dunk on people for it, I don't think they understand all the moving parts to it. Now, there's plenty of criticism to be had about, fly by night AI cheap. And I've made this comparison before when the gym personators, when Jim Can't Swim became big and the gym personators came out, and you had people dropping a block of interrogation footage with no commentary in it and bookending each side with some Wikipedia script about the case and calling it a true crime video. Some people enjoyed that. I was bored with it because there obviously wasn't any effort put into it. And of course, the market has over time weeded those people out until AI comes in and just, creates everything on a platter. And it really is. And as soon as I can tell that a video is AI or channels that is AI, turn it on. Like, don't even go near it. Whether they're monetized or not, I don't even want to give them the clicks or the algorithm, because I'd rather pump up the people
Yep.
who are actually doing
Mhm.
the work. And by the way, thank you, Miranda Stone, again. Question for you, Kamran. I've noticed YouTube has come down hard on some of your videos due to the sensitive nature of your topics. Do you think YouTube policy represents the YouTube watchers or the advertisers?
YouTube as such, they are capitalist 101 because they represent the advertisers solely. Um, a lot of my videos that do get demonetized are because of certain words that I use. They're never the images. It's
Hmm.
sometimes when I describe what happened. So instead of like torn, I cannot say torn. I cannot say bite. I would have to say teeth sunk into. You know,
Hmm. Right.
you've heard this argument before. I'm sure you have.
Yes.
So no, YouTube's primary motive is profit, and who gives them that are advertisers.
Hmm.
So they're going to be loyal to the advertiser first, even though the viewers are what the numbers drive the profits. But they are solely loyal to, I don't know, whoever the advertisers are. I have YouTube Premium, so I've not seen an ad in like a decade. But
Right.
whoever the advertisers are, that's their loyalty. Not certainly not the viewer.
Yeah, and YouTube has given viewers a mechanism to circumvent demonetization with like super thanks and things like that, and also channel memberships to
Yep.
try to even monetize it, even if your content happens to be something that the advertisers won't like. But that requires, someone to make a conscious choice on a regular basis, and that's a whole other kettle of
Yes,
fish.
and I just wanna say on that, I remember when I first got into YouTube, after a while, my videos were not doing so well, and then every creator goes through this mental hurdle of, what's the word? Shadow ban?
Hmm.
uh,
Yep.
YouTube is restricting me. I don't actually believe in any of that. I've always believed,
Mm.
listen, if it's good enough, the algorithm will reward you, right? That's the mentality. Um, but I remember when that first happened, I was obviously going through this self pity phase of YouTube. Why are you doing this to me? And then I started a membership and that stuff. But I made it clear in the membership, look, you're not going to get any extra content from me because I'm
Mm.
never going to charge you for anything I do, right?
Mm.
Like I have, man, I had this folder. Like for example, let me show you on camera. Look, just take a look at this. See all this? See all these
Yes.
CDs? These are all, like, I don't know how many files are on here, you know? And this obviously costs money. And I could charge people for a whole bunch of footage I have on here that I've never released, right?
Right.
But why? Like for for an extra few dollars here or there? No, no. My content will always be free. Um, and as much as I don't like YouTube policy, man, they can be loyal to their advertisers. So I guess I'll just have to stay within the rules, you know?
Yeah, that's a little bit of the struggle I've had with. I just in fact I got an email today from YouTube saying, "Hey, if you start a membership program, there's a
Yep.
$2,000 bonus in there
Yeah,
for you and everything else."
I got the same one. You got to get. I think it's like a, if you get 100 members or something, then they'll give you the bonus, something like
Yeah,
that.
and
Yeah,
and every time that I've thought about starting memberships, I always thought, well, I can't do that if I'm not going to give somebody something extra than what I'm doing,
yeah.
because otherwise I'm going to feel guilty about it. Because I started my channel, I thought at the time, and still to a certain extent, if I get 10 people watching me that want to listen to what I have to say on a regular basis, I'm set because I didn't expect anything from this to begin with.
Sure.
And not a huge channel or anything else. It's always about, maintaining your expectations. As far as I'm concerned, in the level of YouTube that I operate, my audience is the best algorithm. If you like the stuff that I'm doing and you tell somebody else about it, hey, that's one more person more than I ever thought. The day that I crossed 500 subscribers, I made a big deal out of this because I was like, that's more people that that are watching my stuff, at least conceivably on a regular basis, than existed in the entirety of my high school class, plus all the grades
Mm,
below me when I
mm.
graduate. And I thought that can't get much better than that. And so every day I'm just thankful that I get more. I see a little numbers like you got 15 subscribers this month. Like, wow. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's great. But yeah, as far as like trying to monetize it otherwise, I have a full-time job. I could not live on YouTube alone. There's no way to
Yeah.
do it. And if one person gives me a $5 donation during a stream, that's more than any advertising money will come that way for that video in its entire existence. I got one video on my channel. It's a movie review of G.I. Jane from about 5 or 6 years ago. I did with a friend of mine. It is the most viewed video on my channel, probably because people think they're actually going to see the movie and not a review of it. It's got 200,000 views or something on it. And I checked
Wow. Yeah.
the financials on it not too long ago. And as far as ad revenue is concerned, I've made 20 bucks off that. So boy, oh boy. So I've got that as my line of demarcation. It's like, this is not going to be a job for you unless something goofy happens. So I've got a full-time job, which takes up most of my time otherwise. What else was I going to ask you? What's your experience been like? We kind of talked about this on the previous panel discussion you were on, but how has the reaction been from um, either your audience or those times where someone who is involved in a case has contacted you one way or the other? How have those experiences been over? I mean, I guess how the reaction to your content has been from both casual viewers or those directly involved.
From those directly involved, it's only ever been positive. I
Okay.
think I've been contacted maybe 5 to 7 times. Either thank you for the video. I had no idea someone knew about this case is generally the response. Or,
Hmm.
hey, I'm X and X's sister. Do you mind if I can get access to some of the files? To which I either will send them 1 or 2 documents, or
Hmm.
like at some point, because most of them are local, I'll meet them somewhere and give it to them, just so I know it's actually a real person.
Sure.
Um, and I mean, in terms of all the other, I mean, the fact that I have an audience, I mean, it's
Mhm.
generally been positive. I think the only negative I've gotten is either they've disagreed with my opinions, or the usual true crime. You're doing this for profit, or you're exploiting victims, or whatever. But again,
Right.
I can't please everyone.
Tyre Deos, long time no see, to one of the Lords of the Night. Thank you, Tyre. Yeah, Lords of the Night was the nightly talk show I did with a couple of friends of mine for 4 years straight, nearly every night.
Mm.
I got quite the crucible of being a public speaker at that point. If I wasn't over my stage fright by that time, I don't know what else I would have done.
Well, if it
Uh,
helps you, you certainly have the voice for it.
okay, now that okay compared to you and Mr. Black and all these
No, no,
other
no, no, no,
guys,
no, no, no. I have the worst voice of all of them, bar none. I can't enunciate
no,
properly.
no.
I need Invisalign to fix my
Mm.
teeth, because British people have the worst teeth,
Oh,
as you know.
I
Um,
I I'm
yeah.
just finishing up Invisalign. I'm American.
Oh,
I'm
great.
finishing up Invisalign. Yeah, no, I'm just finishing it up. I got it. Well, unfortunately, and then news to my viewers: in order to get the last refinements done, I'm going to have to get braces on my front teeth for a little while because it's just
Mhm.
the trays don't do enough of the stuff and it can't catch that. Anyway, it's a whole other thing. But you feel my pain. I'm glad that you've gone through the Invisalign process.
No,
Well,
I'm saying I need to. Sorry, I'm saying I need to, but I know how
oh,
painful
for
it
your
is, having to keep it in all day and then take it off when you need to eat and all that
yes,
jazz. Yeah,
yeah, and then cleaning and cleaning and cleaning and
yeah, yeah.
everything
Mhm.
else. Especially those that a little still there? Hello? Are you still there? Are
Yeah,
we still on the air?
you were echoing a bit, but can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Well, that was weird for a second.
Hello?
All right. Well, hopefully my internet or StreamYard isn't. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Something must have gone wrong with either my internet or StreamYard for a second there. So hopefully we're still on the air. People in the chat, let me know that you're still there. Let's see. Robot Scribe, Robo. Uh-oh. I love it. I love it when there's technical difficulties I have no control over. Good now, Scribbles. Okay. So apologies, everybody. The problems with live television. You can call me Kim, a Monty Python fan. Obviously, Cam is the realist. He has info about the cases and a great personality, unlike a lot of these channels.
Thank
There
you.
you
Thank
go.
you so
So,
much. I try my best. I appreciate the kind words.
yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of I've been a little bit of a true crime police person a couple of times now, where I've come across a true crime channel that puts out a video on a case, and I won't name the channel, but as far as I'm concerned, they're infamous at this point. But anyway, they're doing the story of Sarah Boone, the lady who put her boyfriend into a suitcase,
Suitcase, yeah.
and their arrangement of showing the interrogation footage of Sarah Boone with a picture in picture of the actual footage, and they time coded it directly to when the detectives were showing her the footage, and then you got the footage of the actual cell phone cam that she put up there. I was like, I've seen that before. I don't think that's something the police put together. And so I
Mm.
had to search my memory for another true crime channel that I'd seen that with, and I contacted them. I said, "This looks just like your stuff. Is that your?" And they're like, "Yeah, we did that ourselves. We're gonna sap the," and then that video was gone in like 10 minutes later. Have you had much experience or had run into anyone duping your work so far, or trying to take credit for one of your videos or portions thereof?
Yeah, this is actually a great question. So there were a couple of times in the beginning. So I mentioned about doing cases that many don't know about.
Mhm.
So a lot of the footage that I have, I get from local authorities, if you like, government buildings or whatever, where I contact the right people. I'll go to the files, whatever. So there's especially in Virginia with the laws, there are
Mhm.
certain cases that I know only I have this footage, or
Right.
only I have these. I know that for a fact because the laws in this state are different to others. So there was, I think, two that of mine that was stolen initially. Both were Virginia cases. Both were names that nobody ever heard of. And they were. What actually happened was is someone emailed me saying, "Hey Cam, someone uploaded this video of yours, and somehow your voice was in the video." I didn't know you collaborated with them. That was the email, right? And then when I went to the channel and I saw the video, the person took the video down saying, "Hey, we've had some audio issues. I'll have the video back in a bit." And what you can do is when you go to the YouTube editor, you can edit out certain bits of videos that are already uploaded.
Yes.
And this muppet didn't realize that in a 10-second segment, he left my voice in there.
Yeah, there you
Um,
go.
so then I commented saying, "Hey, where did you get this from?" Now, of course, the only reason I'm angry is ego, right? Because at the end of the day, I already got the views I was going to get from that video. It did
Sure.
make me a good amount of money, and the story has never been told before. So I did what I had to do in that video. So
Mhm.
this is purely ego. That's it. Because if someone else can take the footage, make it better if they can, give a different analysis, and
Mhm.
make some money off it for their livelihood, then go ahead. But this is all ego at the beginning, you know. Um, so I contacted them. No, I made a comment, sorry, and I said, "Hey, where did you get this from?" He then took the video down. He then posted another community post saying, "I don't know when we can release this video due to YouTube audio issues."
Uh-huh.
Right? Anyway,
Right.
whatever. Next day I wake up, I get an email. "Hey, there seem to be," from the creator, "there seems to be a misunderstanding. I'm so sorry. My lawyer was about to get this footage. He was in the process of getting it. So I figured I could take yours, and then
Uh,
by the time the lawyer gets the footage, then I can have it, right?" And
yeah.
in my mind, I was thinking, just say yes, just ask. Just say, "Hey, look, can I take the footage?" "Yeah, go ahead,
Right.
brother." Sure. Sure. It is my personal private property, that specific file, not the
Mhm.
footage. But having that specific file is my personal private property, so I can give you the middle finger, but just ask. But no, he had to give this whole lawyer, and I'm like, "Brother, you're a true crime creator on YouTube. You don't have a lawyer. Just shut up. I'm not that stupid." That's actually what pissed me off. It
Yeah.
wasn't it wasn't that he took it, it was the fact that he was, like, just trying to throw it in my face in it as if, like, I wasn't born yesterday. So anyway, me
Yeah.
and him went on this back and forth on email. Again, it was all ego. It was all ego. All I had to say was, "No worries, I accept your apology." And that's all I actually had to say. you know.
Right.
But yeah, so that's there are instances where people have stolen my content and then I've bitten back, if you like.
Yeah, oftentimes it's not necessarily the crime, but the cover up that's the bigger insult because now you're making me look like a jackass. Uh, well, I got a truck in the background. Pardon me.
Yeah, like the other day, there was another channel who took my footage, and what they did was is they edit it in a way where you wouldn't see the true crime. What do you call it? The watermark,
Right.
and or any of my analysis. And I was like, hmm. And again, this is one of them cases. Only I have this footage. Nobody else does because there's only one way you can get it,
Right. Hmm.
right? And so I commented saying, interesting footage you have. And he messaged me saying, hey, I'm sorry I took your footage. And again, from experience, I could have replied saying, rah da da. But I thought, you know what? Humble yourself. Humble yourself. We're all in this together. And I
Yeah.
said to him, I said, you know what? Don't worry about it. Next time, ask me because there's a lot more content I have on that video. There's a lot more, like, body cam footage and stuff that I could have given to you that I didn't release.
Hmm.
So next time, if you want to cover something I've covered, just ask. I'll give you whatever you want. No problem.
Yeah, and that's something that it's so mercenary, this genre, especially on YouTube. It's catch as catch can, and everybody thinks that they're on an individual team when nearly everyone I've interacted with, save for the people who are demonstrably thieves, there's no other way to put it. The channel that I spoke of, they took this footage from this other channel. The video that the original channel had done on the case had about 50,000 views or something. Whereas the
Hmm.
channel that stole their stuff, by the time that they took the video down, it had 500,000 views because their subscriber count was up to a million or something. So they were real skeezy on this. So in your case, yeah, the channel that took your stuff probably didn't get all that much out of it and you'd already made your views and everything, but they really gouged these guys and it was terrible. And as far as I know, I don't pay attention to them too much. I don't want to give them too many clicks, but I occasionally go back to that channel and just say, okay, have I seen this before or otherwise? And but anyway, um, yeah, I get uh, I remember what it was like starting out on YouTube and flying by the seat of my pants and just, the amount of work I put into stuff. Like I'm a one man shop. I got no editors or anything else.
Hmm. Hmm.
When I get, as far as I know, I've never been robbed. But if they do, there's nothing to rob because I don't monetize my stuff because YouTube's not going to monetize it anyway. And honestly, I think if I try, except for in some rare cases, I'll put it. If I know that everything I'm doing isn't going to be copyright claimed by somebody else or whatever the hell else. Um, but yeah, the community that I've discovered and just sort of falling into talking to people in this genre, it's all very helpful. It's all very nice. There's very few people who are that I've encountered at least so far who are like buckled down. No, we can't share. Um, they like wanting to. I and let me ask you this: is and I get this sense from some people, and going back to that story we were talking about earlier, true crime content creators seem to be, generally speaking, a very insular bunch until someone opens the door and says, hey, we can be friends. And I don't know if it has something to do with the nature of the subject matter or the amount of focus that's necessary to make stuff like this. Does that make any sense? Does that click with you in any way?
Yeah, I would say the insularity. That's not the word, but the insular nature. Firstly,
Mhm.
I think it comes from competitiveness. Like at
Sure.
first, we don't know each other, so we are kind of competing. But I'll give an example to what you're saying. So when I first started creating content, I was creating soccer content because that's my main domain. And a lot of these people that create soccer content, they do live streams like this, right?
Mhm.
Post game analysis, whatever it may be. And I remember going into one and I asked the guy, I said, hey, look, what do you use to stream? Like, what's this software that you're using? And he replied saying, why are you asking me these questions? I don't want to give away my secrets. Right.
Mm.
And now that I learn the answer is OBS or StreamYard or something.
Right.
What secret are you keeping, you moron? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But so there's that. So now if you fast forward a year and a half from that, Drewby commented on one of my videos and I didn't know who he was, saying, "Hey, we love your mic." I used to have like this the HyperX mic, which
Yes,
changes
the color one.
changes
Yeah,
color. Yeah, yeah,
yep, I
yeah.
remember, yep.
And at that time, I was, I guess you could say, a bigger channel than them. I hate saying that, but I was by numbers. But
Mhm.
I went to his Discord and I said, "Hey, here's the actual um mic. Here's," I sent him like an Amazon link or Best Buy link, one of them. Um, and then from there is how we became friends, and now we're real close. We even met like a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think being close to begin with is to do with the competition. But having gotten to know him and Morbid Curiosity and Explore with us, and a few others, you realize that look, that we're all in this together, you know.
yeah, and
So
when I
I,
started out, I was very lucky. I felt insular because I got onto YouTube because I was fearful of expressing myself in spaces where I was known publicly because it was a lot of backlash. If I said the wrong thing, there was a whole bunch of, fallout and things from that. And so I became very cloistered because I didn't want to, like, tick anybody off or get in trouble or something. But then as soon as I started finding a community of people who were starting around the same time, and it's like I'm fine talking shop and trying to learn something from somebody else. Not that I'm going to steal your secret sauce or something, but just try to make my stuff better and do my own thing. I mean, if I when my first few videos may have in some soft way imitated people because I didn't know what I was doing. I'd sort of like mimic a little bit of one person I saw on YouTube and another person, but eventually you hone it down to your own style just out of necessity, both to, make yourself stand out, but also to a place where you feel comfortable doing it and you don't feel fake, which is something that I've always striven to do. Were there any initial inspirations for how you started your content? Were any other presenters or speakers um, or any other figures from outside the true crime genre, just maybe reporters or some other figure that gave you an idea of how you wanted to approach this?
no, I mean it was more of the theme. So it definitely was similar to a JCS type theme. But after recording one or two, I was like, I'm not JCS. I don't have the voice. I don't have the know-how. I don't have the knowledge. Why am I gonna? That's pretentious. So I
Mhm.
just did it the way I did it. And I remember I was in. So at the time we were moving house, and where I am now, this is a new build. So we were waiting for it to be built. And in that time, I was staying in my mother-in-law's basement, right? And I was working literally till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, writing scripts, trying to learn this whole thing. And I think once I just started recording, I uploaded and it went from there. So I didn't really have any, there was no channel I was trying to replicate, if that makes sense. It just,
Mhm.
I was so naive and I didn't have a reference point. I was like, look, I'm just going to do it and the chips will land where they may, you know?
Yeah, but your situation seemed more necessity is the mother of invention more than anything else, just because of the circumstances you were under,
Oh,
which
excellent point, 100%. And
yeah.
there's no better motivation for a man than his son, you know?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Real quick, Drewby is in the chat. Well, it could be either one, you never know, because, when it comes to
Yeah,
social
you never
media.
know. It could be either one.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Yes, I've made that mistake before. I was DMing with the Misery Machine on Twitter one time, and after like 5 or 6 exchanges back and forth, I said, "Well, thanks, Drewby," and like, "Oh, no, this is Yurgi." Like, "Oh, okay." But yeah, Misery Machine, he absolutely was a bigger channel at the time, a pure gentleman with his response to my question. Yeah, I can't wait to help other people do better with their stuff. I've been asked by multiple people, "Hey, can you help me live stream? I've never live streamed before. What do I do?" And to even just the sense of mentorship, the sense of helping out, and then seeing where someone takes it, even if they become bigger than me, which has happened a couple of times. Like that's fine. It really should be about community first and foremost, as far as I'm concerned. And that's what I'm kind of hoping, if I have a purpose for this particular series, is to try to open up the door to people to understand not only more about the genre, but also the business angle, but also the community side of it, because you really can't wade through this stuff without someone to lean on, I don't think. I don't know if anybody could maintain working in this genre forever without an outlet from someone else who can empathize with their plight. But maybe that's just me. Of course, I haven't found someone yet who doesn't know other people after having done this for a while.
That's a great point. What I've learned from Druby and Yergi and a few other creators, I don't. It's made me a better creator. But also, when things don't go so well, it's only someone in this field is going to understand. What are
Right.
what are the? There's a saying where like, not that I'm at the top of the mountain, but when you get to the top of the mountain, it's a very lonely place,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
There's only few people that can understand. So, but I mean, like I've got 2 YouTube awards, and that was my only goal. Like when I created content, my only goal, like in terms of personal goal, was to get that.
Mhm.
But as long as I'm making enough to provide for my family, then I'm more than happy to share whatever advice or resources I have, which is how Druby and Yogi are, which is why we get along so well, you know?
If okay, so we're going to get to a period for any questions you guys in the audience might have or whatever else here in a second, just to focus on that. So if you have any questions for Cameron, now's the time to post them. It helps if you tag me in your questions so that, actually, it helps actually if you put a whole bunch of question marks at the end of your question. So in the chat, I can see it's a question for him and not something you're talking amongst yourselves about. If suddenly, out of the blue, the true crime genre just became completely untenable for you anymore and you had to do something else on YouTube, is there another subject, or let's say you found some amazing amount of extra time in your day, is there another subject you'd separate from true crime that you would love to do video series on or cover or talk about?
Yeah, life, religion, philosophy, for sure.
Mm. Yeah, you'd threatened me with going deep on this conversation when we first talked about doing an interview, and I was kind of scared as to where that might take us. But maybe we'll have to do that another time.
I
But
mean, when I'm not making true crime and
mhm.
when there's no soccer on TV, all I am reading is philosophy. So,
Mm.
mhm.
Let's see. Do. Any questions so far, guys? Well, I'll wait. I might have to catch up to it. So just as a quick self plug, what are you working on now, or do you have any directions you're planning on taking your content that varies from the current in the near future?
Well, this is going to be an interesting week, and I'm kind of scared. So I've got a case where a child was found unresponsive, and then
Mhm.
the mother and boyfriend are interrogated by police. So I've got the true crime video on them, and then I've got their police interviews on my other channel.
Mm.
The reason why I'm scared is because one of the parties was released not too long ago, right? So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so it's going to be interesting. Um, so that's what I'm working on right now, and then uh, I'm that's for this week, and I've got other cases for next week. But where my content is gonna go, yeah, I want to make more. When my skill set has reached that level, I want to make more documentary style, like actually go to a town where there's a
Mm.
crime, interview the people, that kind of stuff. But I'm not there yet. I'm not good enough for
Right.
that yet, you know. But that
Yeah.
would be the next step.
Yeah, one of my previous guests, in human form, he did a video on the Alaska serial killer whose name suddenly escapes me, but he lives in Alaska. So he started going to the locations where the guy worked, where he picked people up, all that kind of thing, and put those into a video about it. I think it was his last name Ford or something. I forget anyway. Somebody in the chat will remind me, and I'll feel like an idiot for forgetting. Let's see. Misery Machine has a question. Cam, favorite philosophers as of late?
I mean, so I'm big on German idealism, so Kant, um, and Gauthier, I think his name is. I've read a lot of the. I mean, I am a Muslim, so I've read of a lot of the old Arabic philosophers. Al Ghazali, who was the pre-Descartes, before Descartes came along.
Hmm.
For those that don't know, Descartes was the one that said, "I think, therefore I am."
Hmm.
Um, and interesting in all, they all believed in God, which was interesting. But then I'm a fan of British empiricists such as David Hume, Jeremy Bentham, and all that kind of stuff. So, because I feel like they all have very interesting ideas, and even though I do firmly believe in God,
Mhm.
with certainty, I'm always interested on why others don't and how they got to that
Mhm.
conclusion. Not that they're right or wrong. It's just I love to know that thought process. So,
Yeah, on another series I do where I look at public presentations on different subjects and things, I always the watch phrase I always have and try to maintain in life is like always allow for the possibility that you could be wrong, and
mhm.
you can entertain an idea without necessarily having to accept it.
But
Yeah.
let me ask you a
So,
question, just a quick one. To
mhm.
you, what's the difference between knowledge and belief?
um, difference between knowledge and belief, direct experience and tangible evidence.
There you go.
Uh,
That's
bel
a great way to put it. Yep.
Yeah, belief is having well, I mean, it requires faith without evidence is what belief is, or at least um, like. And I actually thought about this the other day. My sister, who is one of my best friends, and we have a great relationship, and I know her, backwards and forwards. Um, I believe in her goodness. Now, do I have evidence of her goodness? Yes. Can I read her mind? No. So, do I know that the things that she's done and the way that she behaves is out of a drive of actual goodness? Well, I can't know that for a certainty. Someone's mind, thoughts, and et cetera are intangible. I can't say for sure. I mean, my experience with her tells me that this is so, but it is still a belief because everybody can turn a different corner, as we know, at any particular point in time. So that is a belief, but I do have some evidence for it. But I also understand the tenuous nature of human behavior. And so that's the one area where I sort of found the sort of the breaking point between knowledge and belief is when it comes to faith in people. And that's not a disparagement against my sister at all. This isn't like I question my sister's motives or anything,
It's
but I
just an
started
example you're using. Yep.
yeah, I just try to find the most extreme example of a situation where I have absolutely no doubt in any reasonable sense about a person's motivations. And yet, there's that little bit of me that goes like, well, always allow for the possibility that you could be wrong, even if it's just the tiniest amount. So that's I don't know if that answers your question, but I was thinking about that the other day.
No, no, you've hit the nail on the head. So for me, knowledge is when you've eliminated all the other possibilities. And I would be even more extreme than you by saying the fact that she's my I do have a sister too. Her being my sister is also a belief. I have no actual tangible proof she's my sister other than the fact my mom told me. If you think about it,
Mhm.
you know? So if we take it to the extreme. So my viewpoint on life is the only thing I know with certainty is God. Everything else is all belief. That's my viewpoint. And I have a long argument for that. But
Sure.
that's how extreme I take the philosophy, you know?
Measure Machine. In human form, you're thinking of, I believe, was Israel Keys. Actually, it was Robert Hansen. I just remembered it a second ago. Robert Hansen, an Alaska serial killer. Israel Keys is a whole other ball of wax, and one of the
Another one that everyone and their mother has covered.
sure, yeah, and we only know maybe the tip of the iceberg as to what he did because he subtracted himself from the equation of life before the totality of his crimes could be discovered. But yeah, he's another one. And I think Israel Keys was actually the first true crime video in human form ever did, honestly. Let's see. Any other questions from the chat? Oh, I say one here. One second. You can call me Kim. Cam, do you see the word Muppet in your philosophy books often?
No, but I do see word like dunce and dullard.
Mm.
Um, something like as a Muslim, we were raised that um with very much from the Aristotle school of what makes a man is virtue,
Hmm.
right? So be kind, remain calm, take away your ego, and if you're going to engage, just put your point across. Your job isn't to convince, because when you try to convince someone, ego comes in, right?
Right.
But when I read a lot of the old Arabic philosophers, they are aggressive when they go after
Hmm.
Plato and when they go after Aristotle, um, dimwit, like all these. So that's the extent of the words that I come across. So I guess the answer is I do see Muppet, but not directly, just in other words.
Yeah. It's more of an exclamation than
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
accusation. Yeah, stoicism over pride as possible. And that's something else. I do my best to argue the point and not the person. And that's usually a better way to try to go
Yes,
after it.
yes. But if I
Uh,
can, if I can finally say, but I've learned that when engaging with someone, like you just said, once you
mhm.
take the ego out, you realize I'm just telling you the message. It's up to you what you do with it.
Right,
You know,
right.
once you get to that point, it's a more fruitful conversation.
Yeah, and it gives the agency to the audience, as you said, to make up their own minds because you can't.
Mhm,
You can't control people. You can control the space. I learned this from a guy who ran a nightclub. You can't control people, but if you can control the space, the people will go where you let them go.
mhm.
And that's about as much as you could probably hope for in most instances, unless you're a total con man and a manipulator or something like that. Let's see. Uh, any other questions, guys? If not, I might have to wrap this up because we are on a bit of a schedule here. Um, so, in your now vast experience within the true crime community, are there any channels or any other, or whether true crime or otherwise, anybody else on YouTube that you'd like to give a shout out to that you think needs some more attention or that deserves it elsewise?
Uh, I mean, like if you were to look at my YouTube homepage,
Hmm.
most of it is like either philosophy stuff or in politics. Because I do pay attention. I do stay on top of everything that's going on in the world. Um,
Sure.
the only channels I would ever shout out are Misery Machine, Explore with Us, and Morbid Curiosity,
All right.
which everyone knows anyway. So
Uh, let's see. Killer Mofo Katie. I'm just going to assume that's Mofo in the middle there. How do you not get down and depressed covering these cases? We kind of touched on that earlier, but do you have an outlet? Do you have something specific that you do to sort of like decompress, or is it just kind of wash over you like water off a duck?
no, because like I said, my entire viewpoint on negativity is that this is a test from God, if you like, and it's up to
Mm,
me how I deal with it. Um, Me being sad and down and depressed, it's actually secondary. The victim, their story, their life is primary. So I guess you just learn to get used to it. Oh, in fact, the only time I've ever gotten actually depressed, if you like, was that case we mentioned, the Nicholson kid
sure.
earlier.
Yeah.
That's the only one. Yeah.
Katie, no need to apologize. It's fine. Yeah, I asked him about that earlier on the show, so I just appreciate the question. Miranda Stone, would you ever be interested in a mass creator meetup? Have you done any crime con type stuff or plan on it?
Well, I mean, I've been told to apply for CrimeCom, I think next year, which I did.
Hmm.
And I have met Misery Machine. We went for dinner.
Hmm.
So yeah, absolutely. I would see it as a friendship meetup rather than a true crime meetup. Like I'm there
Right,
to know you, to know you beyond the screen,
right. Not to
rather than
not to
yeah.
networking for the industry or something.
No, no, no. I mean, I would go to those events if I had to, or if Druby told me to go, I would go. Um, but I would see it as, oh, I'd love to meet you in person for the first time, as
Right.
opposed to let's talk about true crime.
Yeah, and that's what I also appreciate about having people on for these shows is that there's there's the person that is telling me stories about terrible things, and then there's the person that's actually behind it, and that's what I'm very curious to find out about because Um, I guess it also has something to do with my not wanting to be too insular in my interests and my questions for because when I'm asking questions of true crime content creators, ultimately I'm probably asking questions of myself as to why I'm interested in this kind of thing and consume this stuff and find it so fascinating. And but I really appreciate you coming on. I know we're on a clock here. Was there anything that you elsewise wanted to shout out, or mention before I start wrapping things up?
Just that, like in this whole true crime endeavor, just know that the creators I've come across, this is something, this is their career, if you like.
Hmm.
And I think given the subject matter, ethical lines, intention, um, and all that comes into it, which you touched earlier. Are you profiting off the misery of others?
Right.
And I just want people to know that all of them that, if in fact, there are a few grifters I've come across. Again, I hate using
Sure.
that term because I don't know their circumstance, right? But there are some grifters that I know of. But for the most part, all of these creators are just like you and me, who want to live their life, make a living, and then just try and seek meaning somehow, you know? So um I would like it if we slowly got rid of this profiting off misery type conversation we have sometimes, because
Hmm.
I don't see it. So yeah.
And just one more assurance. Suzanne says, Cam, we love your voice.
Well, there had to be one.
There
Thank you.
had to be one. Yeah. Well, self-deprecation will win the day again. Kamran, thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you got a busy schedule and everything to talk to me, and I appreciate you coming out for the panel discussion. I hope to have you on again in the near future for something else as things come up. Everyone, again, all the links to Cameron's particulars are in the description below. His YouTube channel, his Patreon, Twitter, all the 9 yards I could find on there for him. So check out those if you haven't already. And if you would, a brief moment of shouting out for myself. If you don't know about the channel Little Shop of Crime, I keep shouting this out because Steve is a great guy. I've talked to him offline several times, and he does great work. And it only comes out once in a while, but once it does, it's really worth seeing. And he has, as I've said before, if there is a true crime ASMR, his voice will be the most calming voice to tell you terrible things you've ever heard in your life. I swear. So check out Little Shop of Crime. Thank you again, Miranda Stone. Great chat. Appreciate it, Miranda, very much. It's very generous of you. You've made up for any of the not YouTube ads that would not be on here anyway. Um, and another one more sort of slightly selfish plea. If you like this kind of thing, these kind of interviews and interactions with true crime content creators, please share this stuff around and let people know that it exists, especially if you happen to be in contact with a true crime content creator out there. The biggest hurdle I've had so far is just getting in contact with some people because they're, as Cameron sort of mentioned, they're high on the mountain oftentimes, and I'm just one voice amongst a million trying to get their attention for a few minutes. And I don't want to be obnoxious, but it does a little help from a friend always helps. So please like this kind of thing, share it out to people you think might like it as well, and check out Kamran's stuff when you have the opportunity. Again, Cameron, thank you for joining me. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. If I didn't get to your question or your comment, please leave it in the comments below after the video posts, and I will either answer it myself or attempt to pass it on to Kamran for him to take a look at. And as well, at the top of the chat box is a link to the National Center for Victims of Crime. If you can donate, please do so. And even if you can share that on social media, that'd be appreciated. Everyone, have a good rest of your Monday and week ahead of you. Hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and we will see you on the next one. Take care, and bye-bye. You can say bye too.
Oh, bye-bye.
Just in case you want to.